The only way to deal with an unfree world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. In the depth of winter I finally learned that there was in me an invincible summer. A man without ethics is a wild beast loosed upon this world. Men must live and create. Live to the point of tears. Nobody realizes that some people expend tremendous energy merely to be normal. To be happy we must not be too concerned with others. I know of only one duty, and that is to love. He who despairs of the human condition is a coward, but he who has hope for it is a fool. The struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Real generosity toward the future lies in giving all to the present. Every act of rebellion expresses a nostalgia for innocence and an appeal to the essence of being. Man is the only creature that refuses to be what he is. A free press can, of course, be good or bad, but, most certainly without freedom, the press will never be anything but bad. Alas, after a certain age every man is responsible for his face. But what is happiness except the simple harmony between a man and the life he leads? Without work, all life goes rotten. But when work is soulless, life stifles and dies. It is not your paintings I like, it is your painting. We continue to shape our personality all our life. If we knew ourselves perfectly, we should die. I would rather live my life as if there is a God and die to find out there isn't, than live as if there isn't and to die to find out that there is. Nothing is more despicable than respect based on fear. You will never be happy if you continue to search for what happiness consists of. You will never live if you are looking for the meaning of life. Blessed are the hearts that can bend, they shall never be broken. Those who lack that courage will always find a philosophy to justify it. You cannot create experience. You must undergo it. Autumn is a second spring when every leaf is a flower. Friendship often ends in love, but love and friendship, never. The only real progress lies in learning to be wrong all alone. Freedom is nothing but a chance to be better. The absurd is the essential concept and the first truth. There is no love of life without despair of life. Don't wait for the last judgment. It takes place every day. The need to be right is the sign of a vulgar mind. To know oneself, one should assert oneself. Every great work makes the human face more admirable and richer, and that is its whole secret. It is necessary to fall in love, if only to provide an alibi for all the random despair you are going to feel anyway. An intellectual is someone whose mind watches itself. The welfare of the people in particular has always been the alibi of tyrants. No cause justifies the deaths of innocent people. There is no fate that cannot be surmounted by scorn. A taste for truth at any cost is a passion which spares nothing. Against eternal injustice, man must assert justice, and to protest against the universe of grief, he must create happiness. Without freedom, no art. Art lives only on the restraints it imposes on itself, and dies of all others. Charm is a way of getting the answer yes without asking a clear question. Truth, like light, blinds. Falsehood, on the contrary, is a beautiful twilight that enhances every object. We always deceive ourselves twice about the people we love, first to their advantage, then to their disadvantage. Stupidity has a knack of getting its way. Some people talk in their sleep. Lecturers talk while other people sleep. Every revolutionary ends up either by becoming an oppressor or a heretic. By definition, a government has no conscience. Sometimes it has a policy, but nothing more. We used to wonder where war lived, what it was that made it so vile. And now we realize that we know where it lives, inside ourselves. A guilty conscience needs to confess. A work of art is a confession. In order to understand the world, one has to turn away from it on occasion. It is a kind of spiritual snobbery that makes people think they can be happy without money. The society based on production is only productive, not creative. At any street corner the feeling of absurdity can strike any man in the face. No matter what cause one defends, it will suffer permanent disgrace if one resorts to blind attacks on crowds of innocent people. Violence is both unavoidable and unjustifiable. How hard, how bitter it is to become a man. Too many have dispensed with generosity in order to practice charity. I was born poor and without religion, under a happy sky, feeling harmony, not hostility, in nature. I began not by feeling torn, but in plenitude. All modern revolutions have ended in a reinforcement of the power of the state. Every man, and for stronger reasons, every artist, wants to be recognized. So do I. We call first truths those we discover after all the others. We rarely confide in those who are better than we are. The desire for possession is insatiable, to such a point that it can survive even love itself. To love, therefore, is to sterilize the person one loves. There is the good and the bad, the great and the low, the just and the unjust. I swear to you that all that will never change. Why should it be essential to love rarely in order to love much? There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. Real nobility is based on scorn, courage, and profound indifference. One leader, one people, signifies one master and millions of slaves. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. Heroism is accessible. Happiness is more difficult. Ah, mon cher, for anyone who is alone, without God and without a master, the weight of days is dreadful. Those who write clearly have readers. Those who write obscurely have commentators. Note, besides, that it is no more immoral to directly rob citizens than to slip indirect taxes into the price of goods that they cannot do without. It is normal to give away a little of one's life in order not to lose it all. Your successes and happiness are forgiven you only if you generously consent to share them. There will be no lasting peace either in the heart of individuals or in social customs until death is outlawed. Men are never really willing to die except for the sake of freedom, Therefore they do not believe in dying completely. Culture, the cry of men in face of their destiny. I draw from the absurd three consequences: my revolt, my liberty, my passion. Virtue cannot separate itself from reality without becoming a principle of evil. We turn toward God only to obtain the impossible. When you have really exhausted an experience, you always reverence and love it. To abandon oneself to principles is really to die, and to die for an impossible love which is the contrary of love. As a remedy to life and society, I would suggest the big city. Nowadays, it is the only desert within our means. How can sincerity be a condition of friendship? A taste for truth at any cost is a passion which spares nothing. All that I know most surely about morality and obligations I owe to football. To ensure the adoration of a theorem for any length of time, faith is not enough, a police force is needed as well. The absurd depends as much on men as on the world. For the moment, it is all that links them together. I grew up with the sea, and poverty for me was sumptuous. Then I lost the sea and found all luxuries grey and poverty unbearable. What is a rebel? A man who says no, but whose refusal does not imply a renunciation. Men are convinced of your arguments, your sincerity, and the seriousness of your efforts only by your death. I should like to be able to love my country and still love justice. Man wants to live, but it is useless to hope that this desire will dictate all his actions. I am not made for politics because I am incapable of wanting or accepting the death of the adversary. Retaliation is related to nature and instinct, not to law. Law, by definition, cannot obey the same rules as nature. In order to exist just once in the world, it is necessary never again to exist. What the world requires of the Christians is that they should continue to be Christians. Man is an idea, and a precious small idea once he turns his back on love. You have to be very rich or very poor to live without a trade. The day when I am no more than a writer, I shall cease to be a writer. Conscious of not being able to separate myself from my time, I have decided to become part of it. To be famous, in fact, one has only to kill one's landlady. I have never been able to renounce the light, the pleasure of being, and the freedom in which I grew up. Those who weep for the happy periods which they encounter in history acknowledge what they want, not the alleviation but the silencing of misery. Every time somebody speaks of my honesty, there is someone who quivers inside me. After all, every murderer when he kills runs the risk of the most dreadful of deaths, whereas those who kill him risk nothing except promotion. To govern means to pillage, as everyone knows. Martyrs, my friend, have to choose between being forgotten, mocked or used. As for being understood, never. Only a philosophy of eternity, in the world today, could justify non-violence. Rebellion cannot exist without the feeling that somewhere, in some way, you are justified. The role of the intellectual cannot be to excuse the violence of one side and condemn that of the other. The real passion of the 20th century is servitude. The myth of unlimited production brings war in its train as inevitably as clouds announce a storm.